The future of Flight Sim 2024, career mode improvements, post-launch performance and technical challenges, changes to VR, upcoming sim updates and world updates, and much, much more. All of this from the latest development update. So let's start with career mode improvements, because I know that is something a lot of people have discussed over the past few months. I've seen a lot of comments in my videos about all of this. So in the development update, we got some words from the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, Jörg Newman, as well as the team from Asobo. So what we got here is an aircraft fleet and compatibility in career mode. The team is working on unlocking career mode features by ensuring that both first-party and select third-party aircraft features meet the new system requirements. But this does come with certification processes for models like the Beluga and others that are underway. All of this is currently being tested. The reason for this is that career mode is fairly in-depth, and therefore Microsoft need to make sure that any planes they add to that actually support the career mode. They're also going to be adding in future updates the ability to filter mission types, specializations, and the ability to filter missions by aircraft type. So this will allow players to focus on missions that really do suit their preferred approach to how they want to engage with career mode. They also want to include additional real-world procedural enhancements such as improved ATC interactions which would apply during various missions. All of this is planned as well to make long flights a bit more interesting. Now that's a few of the new things coming to career mode, but I'm sure many of you are more interested in the performance issues and bug-related problems. So yeah, this was also addressed, this was also mentioned. Specifically, we've got a few issues here. One of the things we've spoken about many times in the past is the turbulence and weather-related bugs. So they noted that in the live weather conditions, there was a bug where turbulence was exaggerated, and this is especially notable if you're using a smaller plane. Things such as the Cessna 172 can really be kicked about. They say that this is something that has been fixed, along with improvements to thermal and updraft simulations, and that this was addressed in a recent update. We then come on to mission delivery and the availability issues. So career missions which are delivered by the dedicated service were discussed. Some missions, like the night missions or the VIP charter services, are pending some further updates because the service components for this, the components on the server side of things, have not yet been updated, even though some bugs have now been fixed. It seems then that this one is well on the way to being basically fixed and corrected. We then come to heavy cargo missions and aircraft certification. So there was mention here of heavy cargo missions being blocked in career mode because one specific aircraft hasn't been fully approved yet, and this is seen as a temporary block until the aircraft passes all its tests. So it's good to hear that the career mode is well on the way to being improved and being fixed. Not only because it did have and does have quite a lot of bugs, but also because, as Microsoft acknowledged and seemed to very clearly imply, there are now more players engaging with career mode than with free flight. So it seems that, based on what they're saying here, reading between the lines, that career mode is very likely one of the most popular modes within the sim. And sticking with that subject of player numbers for the moment, Microsoft did have a rather interesting stat here. They didn't touch on player numbers specifically, but they did talk about the entire player base across both Flight Sim games. That's the 2020 edition and the 2024 edition. They said that 2/3 of the Flight Sim player base are now in 2024, whilst 1/3 is still playing 2020. So there's a pretty interesting distribution there. It seems that the majority of people have moved on to the new sim. Moving on, Microsoft touched on the various launch issues and the ongoing bugs. Now they have spoken about this before, but it seems that this is such a deep issue for them, and indeed it is a deep issue for the players as well, and has been for quite a long time. So yeah, they seem to feel that they needed to talk about this again, and in so doing, they spoke about the lead up to the launch. People asked basically what went wrong, how did all this happen, and what did you do before the game was launched to make things as good as possible. So, launch day challenges. The team explained that despite successful tech alpha tests, and these tests involved around about 17,000 users over a 60-hour period, which at the time showed everything and the system was green and that everything would be not really a problem, the actual launch day saw a massive influx of millions of simmers. This is something that we've seen before on other games, it's not a new thing, but for whatever reason it still hit them unexpectedly. So yeah, an unexpected surge that overwhelmed the content delivery network, the CDN, and that caused widespread unavailability as well as those long queues that we all experienced. So yeah, that's kind of repeating what went on, we do know about that. They then went on to say it took 3 to 4 days to resolve these issues, which triggered extensive internal discussions about scaling and data streaming for future launches, and as a result they committed to never shipping another release without proper beta period, meaning longer alpha, beta and fine-tuning phases in the future. Look forward to seeing that. It's something that we really need to see, but fingers crossed they actually stick to that. Now I'm not sure if they were just referring to a Microsoft Flight Simulator there or the broader Microsoft Game Launcher, but either way it seems they're acknowledging the various problems there. Now moving on, discussing what actually happened, the pre-launch bug fixing and testing efforts. So in this section of the stream, Jörg Newman presented some very specific numbers, stating that almost 50,000 bugs were filed before launch. Of these 50,000 bugs, 32,000 were fixed. They noted that these numbers also included duplicates, so issues classified as by design, and no reproduction cases, so the actual impact might have been a bit lower. Testing also involved significant effort, with 71 testers on the Microsoft side and around 20 testers from external or partner teams, contributing to a combined effort of roughly 90 testers. In total, about 800 people have been working on Flight Sim 2024, either writing code or creating content, which does highlight the scale of the sim and the complexity of the sim as well. Now, even though many bugs were fixed pre-launch, Microsoft did acknowledge that some issues remained and would continue to be addressed in the upcoming update. So yeah, not everything is rosy, we all know that, but it's something that they say they are still working on. Now, they stressed that hundreds of bugs have already been fixed in Sim Update 1, though not all of these fixes appear in the public release notes just yet. But that's largely because the process for this is still ongoing. So ultimately then, they're kind of adjusting their rhythm and cadence for releases here. Sim Update 1 is in testing currently. There is a public test on this, and hopefully it should be released pretty soon. But future updates like Sim Update 2 and beyond will follow a more measured schedule, and they're going to slow things down a little bit to try and ensure quality and stability over that big rush of releases. And Jörg Newman did touch on the fact that he visited forums and I guess other communities as well, and saw that a lot of people were suggesting that they need to slow down the release of ongoing content to focus on bugs, and this is something I've seen mentioned myself quite a lot, so it seems that is one of the things that they're going to do. We'll be discussing more about the release cadence and other patches in just a moment. So some of the other fixes we've seen that are on the way or already been implemented as follows. There's memory and VRAM optimizations. These optimizations include fine-tuning asset usage so that VRAM overcommitment is minimized. They also mentioned the rolling cache size, and that recommended that players should increase this from 8GB to 16GB by default. Although a lot of people have increased this, a lot of users have opted to go for 32 to 64GB, and this ultimately will reduce repeated downloads and therefore hopefully improve stability for them. The team also discussed a variety of different fixes that have gone into aircraft right across the boards, as well as different environments. So these are fixes for aircraft systems such as flap settings, pressurization and transponder issues. Environmental improvements meanwhile include multi-sampling of terrain, which hopefully will bring some performance improvements. Now moving on to those patch releases, Sim Update specifics. Now a big portion of the discussion on the dev stream focused on the planning of these Sim Updates, and ultimately they're really focusing a lot on the testing process and the timelines for all of these. So this did include the presentation of a roadmap. We know that Sim Update 1, as already discussed, is in testing. Sim Update 2 meanwhile is currently targeted for the end of April, and a further major updates are planned for June and then beyond. Now Sim Update 1 does focus on bug fixes, the marketplace integration, more on that further into the video, and overall stability improvements. Now of course Sim Updates are not the only updates we get. There's also world updates, city updates, as well as general updates. Now What's happening with all of these? Well, World Update 19, also known as the Brazil Update, should be coming at the beginning of March. However, this is contingent on the successful release of the marketplace. Now, everyone was hoping that the marketplace would be released very close to the release of the sim itself, and although we knew before the release that it was going to be delayed, we're here now in the mid-first quarter of 2025, and it's still not really anywhere in sight. The reason for this is that Microsoft are having a lot of trouble with the add-ons and the other components of the marketplace. There's a lot of challenges here. Basically, what they've said is this all comes down to backwards compatibility. Initially, for a long time, in fact, Jörg Newman and Microsoft said that backward compatibility with the mods and add-ons we've all purchased with Flight Sim 2020 would very easily be integrated into Flight Sim 2024. It turned out that's been a lot harder than they could have ever expected. They've said that maintaining compatibility with legacy aircraft and third-party add-ons involves intricate testing and constant updates, and this has slowed down the timeline release of the marketplace. So unfortunately, this does have an impact on the next World Update. Microsoft have said that if the marketplace isn't released by the early March, then World Update 19 would very likely be delayed. So yeah, it does seem that World Update is contingent on the marketplace actually successfully launching. Another area very briefly worth touching on is the streaming nature of the Flight Sim 2024 client. Now, we know that this does have a minimal install compared to Flight Sim 2020, with much of the content and the client actually being streamed in as you use it. Microsoft have estimated that the data consumption rates were approximately here between 3 to 5 gigabytes per hour, depending on the nature of your flight. And this is perhaps part of the reason why they've recommended increasing the size of the rolling cache, so that once this stuff is downloaded, you won't have to repeatedly download it. Although that said, Microsoft have said they're working on a system which will allow you to permanently download many of these various different assets, and some of the client, I guess, as well. That seems to be what they're suggesting, that once some of this is downloaded, it will be able to permanently stay on your system rather than having to be consistently re-downloaded every time you load up or every time you play. No word yet on when that will be released or exactly how it will work, but from what a lot of people say, they do feel it's a much needed system, a much needed change, and I can totally understand and relate to that. Now, ATC was also discussed. Basically, the conversation covered some of the problems we're seeing during the long pauses from announcements and the problematic text-to-speech performance. And they outlined some plans for significant improvements here. So future updates will incorporate more dynamic ATC interactions, such as improved procedural responses, voice recognition, and better matching of airspace frequencies. Voice recognition is pretty interesting, actually, if we have the ability to directly talk with ATC as though it is actually real. Now, the team is also collaborating here with external ATC experts and third-party developers to integrate real-world procedures into the simulator, making the whole thing that much more realistic. Now, the thing that really stood out to me here then, the thing I ultimately want to focus on, is that they did highlight the text-to-speech improvements, as I mentioned a moment ago. So yeah, 30 tickets there apparently are being tracked to address all of this and the related issues with the text-to-speech tokens. This is, they say, is being prioritized as a major fix for Sim Update 2. Remember, that one is coming sometime around about April. And then we come to VR. Now, I know a lot of people have had concerns about VR when it comes to Flight Sim 2024. There's a few different things that we can touch on here. To start with, there's a number of problems that we do have with VR, and the team noted that some features are not working as expected. For example, the flight bag, the EFB, sometimes doesn't appear, and there are some noticeable visual differences between the left eye and the right eye views, and these are glitches that really do affect the overall immersion with VR, as well as the usability, really, let's be frank. So instead of rushing through fixes for VR, the team are going to be taking some time to actually rework key parts of the VR rendering system. That means that they're going to be updating how things are displayed and ensuring that any changes are properly tested before they're released. So this means, unfortunately, you won't be seeing any quick fixes, but it does mean, counter to that, well, the fixes shouldn't, hopefully at least, won't be introducing other problems along the way. Now, that said, whilst we're kind of talking about the idea that there won't be any quick fixes here, that idea is relative. They did say that the bulk of VR improvements are scheduled for Sim Update 2, so this update is expected to address the major glitches like the inconsistent visuals and improve the overall VR experience. Now, they're also looking at some new features here for VR, so there's also discussion about the potential for adding a quad view mode in the future, and this would let you see multiple perspectives at once. So this is a pretty interesting concept. The idea is to add extra display modes that show multiple views, for example 4 different angles simultaneously, and this could be useful for monitoring different aspects of your flight, such as instrument panels, external views, or even a minimap view all at once in VR. So the idea has been raised frequently within the community, and the team is aware of the interest here. However, it remains in the discussion phase, so no official timeline or detailed plan has yet been set, but it is something that the developers are exploring. Obviously though, a feature such as this could significantly impact performance, and that means yes, the team are having discussions with hardware experts, VR hardware experts, to see how this could be implemented without compromising performance. So yeah, it kind of looks like there's some pretty big things planned for VR. So there we have it, an overview of pretty much everything that was discussed in the recent dev livestream. Now, appreciate this video was a little bit longer than usual. The dev stream itself was 2 hours, making it a pretty long one, and I've tried to condense it down as much as possible without missing out too much of the nuance there. So yeah, trying to find a bit of a balance there. Hopefully I've done a good enough job with that. Let me know what you think about it in the video description below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.